The blizzard screamed over the ridge, but inside William Reeves' longhouse, the cold never reached the family.
I keep expecting it to go cold.
The heat, bleeding through the timber, came from the other side, the animal byre where his cattle stood, shoulder to shoulder.
We'll share a wall with the cattle. Their heat will keep us warm all winter.
You mean you are going to live in a barn, Reeves? That's the most foolish thing I've ever heard.
The town watched him build the shared wall with amusement and scorn, but William kept working.
Let them mock. When the wood runs out, this wall will tell the truth.
Papa, the wall is warm again tonight, like a big blanket.
One warm night doesn't make a winter. The real test is still coming.
As the winter deepened, the scoffers burned their precious wood. William Reeves simply leaned his chair against the wall that never stopped bleeding heat and waited. That first true freeze of November, the Reeves family gathered beside the shared wall as the temperature dropped hard.
It's really warm. I kept expecting it to fail, but it's like the wall itself is alive.
Papa, I can hear the cows moving. It's like they're keeping us company.
Across the settlement, other families woke to frozen water and shivered through the dark hours.
Brian Alden wouldn't laugh if he sat right here now. The joke would freeze on his lips.
Do you think they'll ever admit you were right, William? Or will we be the town fools forever?
I didn't build it to win arguments. I built it so you and Emma wouldn't freeze.
Beyond the timber, the cattle lowed softly, their breath rising in the cold, their bodies feeding the wall that never stopped giving.
One wall, and the herd solves what firewood can't. That's the truth no scoffer will hear.
And so the winter stretched ahead, cold and deep, while the Reeves family slept with their backs to a wall that whispered heat instead of words. By late December, the settlement's woodpiles had shrunk to nothing. Families burned broken chairs in hope.
You got a trick, Reeves. Your chimney never smokes, but your house stays warm. Out with it.
The cattle share a wall with us. Their heat bleeds through. That's all.
Living in a barn. And now you expect me to believe the animals keep you warm? You are hiding something.
William, you can't tell them anymore. They'll never listen. They'll just turn on us.
If I show them, they'll call it witchcraft. If I stay silent, they'll call me selfish. Either way, the wall does its work.
From his warm window, William watched the village shiver, the frost painting their windows like a warning he never had to read.
I've seen his cattle, all fat and warm while ours starve. He's made a deal with the devil, I tell you.
The rumors spread like frost on a window pane. William Reeves, they whispered, had found heat where none should exist. William pulled the curtain closed. Let the town think what they would. The wall would answer for him when winter ran out of mercy. By mid-January, the northern sky turned the color of old iron. The wind carried a promise of snow that tasted like steel. William hauled extra feed into the byre and checked every seam in the timber, his breath already frosting in the air.
This storm won't be something you wait out. It will be something you survive.
Inside, Margaret knelt with Emma, whispering prayers for protection, while the cattle lowed uneasily in the next room. When the blizzard hit, it didn't scream. It roared, shaking the longhouse to its bones. The family huddled against the shared wall as the wind clawed at the roof, but the timber held and the heat kept bleeding through.
It's holding, Margaret. Feel it. The wall won't let us down.
But will it last the night?
Outside, the world had vanished into a white fury. Inside, the longhouse groaned, but the shared wall stood between them and the killing cold. Night fell without a single star, and only the howling wind answered the darkness. The storm had passed. In the morning silence, William found his cattle alive, their breath fogging the cold air as they chewed on stored hay.
Not one lost. The wall kept them warm, just like us.
But beyond his fence, the snow told a different story. Tom Eason's field was a graveyard of frozen livestock, dark shapes half buried in drift. Brian Alden's herd lay still where they had fallen, their bodies rigid under a cruel white blanket. Tom stood at his barn door, staring at his losses, His hands hung limp at his sides. No words left inside him.
Tom, I am sorry. I came as soon as I saw.
They froze in the night. I had no shelter left for them, my children. We have nothing now.
William returned home with a heavy step, the image of frozen cattle branded into his mind. Margaret met him at the door.
What happened out there? I saw you talking to Tom.
The wall. It kept them warm, too. Not just us. Our cattle are alive while theirs are dead.
Brian Alden blocked his path, grief twisting into something darker than sorrow.
You cursed us. You and your witch wall. My herd is dead because of you.
I tried to explain. You laughed me out of the square. I didn't curse you. You cursed yourself with pride.
Brian shoved him hard against the fence, then turned away, too broken to fight any longer. That evening, Tom Eason appeared at William's door, his coat thin and his children's faces hollow.
William, I have nothing left. We burned the last chair. My little one won't stop shivering.
Without a word, William led one of his cows through the snow to Tom's cabin. Inside, he began nailing planks to create a partition, the animal's warmth already easing the brutal freeze.
They'll call us both mad. They'll say you bewitched me, or that I've joined your devil pact.
Then we'll be warm madmen. That's better than frozen saints.
By the time the last nail went in, the cow stood quiet behind the new partition, her breath already warming the small room.
It's working. I can feel it through the wood. My wife says she hasn't felt this warm in weeks.
Outside, the wind was picking up again. Another storm was rolling down from the mountains. That night, the storm struck hard, but the makeshift byre held. The shared wall glowed with animal heat. When dawn broke, Tom's children were still asleep, their faces no longer blue, but pink with warmth.
You did it, William. You saved us.
Tom took William's hand, tears freezing on his cheeks the moment they stepped outside.
I owe you my family's lives. If there's ever a way I can repay you.
Keep them warm. That's payment enough.
William walked back through the drifts, knowing the secret was now kept by two families instead of one. 3 mornings later, Brian Alden saw smoke rising from Tom Eason's chimney, a plume he hadn't seen in weeks.
Tom Eason's got smoke. How? He had nothing left to burn. Something's not right.
It's no trick, Brian. William helped me build a wall. The cow keeps it warm.
A wall? You've been bewitched. He's in league with the devil, and now you've joined him.
By evening, half the settlement crowded the general store, lanterns throwing jagged shadows on frightened faces.
I say we run him out of this valley. He'll bring a curse on every one of us.
Give me one day. I'll build a small wall, a model, and show you heat with no fire, no witchcraft, just the animal's breath.
I've felt it myself. My children are alive because of that wall. Let him prove it to you.
The room fell into a grudging silence. Then a weathered elder spoke up. You'll have until dawn, Reeves. Build your wall. If it stays cold, you leave. Through the freezing night, William and Tom worked by lantern light, fitting timber and sealing seams on a miniature longhouse. By dawn, the model stood in the town square, its little wall chest high, a borrowed goat bleeding inside.
If that wall gets warm enough to feel by supper time, Reeves, I'll eat my hat in front of everyone.
A nervous laugh rippled, but most faces were tight with fear and hope in equal measure.
Heat doesn't just vanish. Cold steals it on the wind. Seal the cracks, and the warmth stays where it belongs.
He held a candle to a seam, and the smoke bent inward, swallowed by the invisible draft. The crowd leaned in, seeing for the first time how moving air stole heat away.
I've seen it work in my own cabin. Just give it time.
We'll wait all day if we have to, but don't think I'll be fooled by parlor tricks, Reeves.
The test had begun, the tiny byre dwelling standing like a promise against the January cold. Hour by hour, the little wall grew warm to the touch. The goat inside stopped shivering, its breath steady and calm.
I can feel it through the wood. It's warm. Really warm.
That ain't possible. There's no fire in there.
The crowd surged forward, disbelief cracking into something like hope on weathered faces.
This warmth. I didn't invent it. My grandfather knew it. The old country knew it.
He saw a village across the sea, long houses glowing with cattle heat, a whole settlement that never froze.
Grandfather's voice came back through the years. We always kept the cows close, boy. That's how we survived. It's not mine. It's ours.
Brian stood frozen at the edge of the crowd, the mockery gone from his face, replaced by something he couldn't name. The test had proven the heat, but William now understood the real gift was never his to claim alone. But Brian Alden shoved through the crowd, his face twisted with something more desperate than anger.
It's a trick. You've all been bewitched. I won't be fooled by a warm board and a goat's breath.
I was there. It's real. William saved my family. I felt the heat with my own hands.
The settlement split like cracked ice, half muttering in wonder, half clinging to fear.
Tomorrow, at my own hearth, I'll teach any man who wants to learn. No tricks, no secrets. Just walls and warmth.
Brian spat into the snow and turned his back, walking alone toward a home that had no fire left. That night, the wind shifted. A deeper cold poured down from the mountains, sharp enough to crack timber.
They could all be warm by now. But pride is colder than any winter. Those who won't learn may not survive what's coming.
The crowd melted into the dusk, leaving only the promise of a lesson and the weight of what defiance cost. The next morning, a dozen neighbors crowded into William's home, listening as he explained how to build a wall that breathed heat.
The wall doesn't make heat. It traps what the cattle already give. Seal the seams, and the cold stays out.
But that evening, a desperate figure slipped through the storm to Margaret's door. Brian's wife, her shawl frozen stiff.
She came to me. William, her children are blue with cold. Brian won't listen anymore. Please, save them.
The man who called me a witch now has his children freezing. A child's life outweighs any grudge.
William pulled on his heaviest coat and picked up his lantern. He didn't need convincing. Outside, the storm was gathering again, but William walked into the white, toward the home of his accuser. The hardest wall to breach is pride, but warmth had never waited for an apology. He would go not for Brian, but for the children who bore no fault in their father's stubbornness. William pushed open the door and found the Alden family huddled under every scrap of cloth they owned.
Get out of my house, Reeves. We don't need your pity.
Your wife came to mine. She said your children are freezing. They're dying, Brian.
William lifted his lantern toward the corner. The youngest child's lips were tinted blue.
I don't know how to save them.
I'll show you. Tonight we build a wall. But you must trust me, Brian.
Brian looked at his wife. Then, back at William, there was no fight left.
Do it. Just save them.
William set his lantern down and picked up a hammer. The hardest conversion had just begun. And so the man who had mocked the wall now placed his family's life on the same old wisdom he had scorned. The next morning, Tom arrived early, and the three men began raising the partition in Brian's cramped, freezing cabin.
I don't know the first thing about building a wall that breathes.
You start by listening to the old ways. They'll teach you better than I can.
As they worked, William spoke of the old country, a village where every longhouse shared a wall with cattle, and no winter ever froze them.
My grandfather's house was built like this. The animals on one side, the family on the other.
Your grandfather, he knew this.
He lived it, Brian. 1,000 years of wisdom, passed down from people who understood that warmth could be shared.
Brian hammered a peg in silence, his face unreadable, but his hands kept working. Tom looked at William and nodded, understanding that the old ways were finally taking root in the hardest soil. And as the wall rose, plank by plank, so did a fragile trust, built not on words, but on the shared purpose of keeping families warm. That evening, the new wall glowed warm in Brian's home. His wife touched it and smiled for the first time in weeks.
I was a fool. A prideful fool who nearly let his children freeze.
The next morning, the general store was crowded. Brian Alden stood on a crate, his voice rough but clear.
I wronged William Reeves. He saved my family when I would have let them freeze out of pride.
The gathering turned toward William, who stood at the back, quiet and steady.
Reeves, come forward. Tell them what you told me about the old country.
William walked through the parting crowd and stood beside the man who had once called him a witch.
This isn't my wisdom. It comes from across the sea, from villages that never froze because they kept the cows close.
And for the first time, the town listened without mockery. Hunger for knowledge replacing fear, the wall that had been mocked, now became the foundation of a new understanding for the entire settlement. William picked up a piece of charcoal and began sketching on a rough plank.
My grandfather's village looked like this. Every longhouse shared a wall with cattle. They never froze.
He traced the simple lines of a byre dwelling, the animals' heat bleeding through the common wall. The crowd leaned in, some nodding, a few murmuring in dawning comprehension.
I'll help build one for any man who needs it. I owe that much.
A weathered elder raised his hand. All in favor of adopting this design by spring. Say aye. The room erupted in a chorus of ayes, the sound cutting through the cold outside. Tom Eason stepped forward and clasped William's shoulder, his eyes wet.
They finally see it, William. The old way will save us all.
William looked at his grandfather's sketch and at the faces around him, understanding that the legacy had taken root. By week's end, the first new buyer rose for a young couple, Brian Alden swinging a hammer at the head of the crew.
I wish I'd listened sooner. We lost too much because of my stubbornness.
You are listening now. That's what matters. The wall doesn't care about yesterday.
Children ran among the timber stacks, their laughter a sound the valley hadn't heard in months. By dusk, a second frame stood, and a third. The village that had nearly frozen now built with desperate speed.
I never thought I'd see the day when the whole town worked together like this.
William turned to Brian, who was wiping sweat despite the cold. A silent nod passed between them, the first true gesture of respect.
From now on, any family that's cold has a claim on my hammer. I mean that, William.
As darkness fell, the first warm lights appeared in the new longhouses. Each glowing wall a promise kept. The wall that had been scorned now held the town together, its heat a testament to wisdom older than any of them. Brian invited William to supper that night. The table was rough-hewn, but the warmth from the shared wall was real.
I never thanked you properly, William. Not for the wall, for teaching me what pride nearly cost.
You saved your family, Brian. I just showed you the way.
To the old country. To the people who knew this before we were born.
May its walls always keep us warm.
They drank, the silence filled with the lowing of cattle on the other side of the glowing timber.
Tell me more about your grandfather's village. I want my children to know.
They built with what they had. Stone, wood, and the beasts that shared their breath. It's not complicated, just old.
The shared wall radiated a steady amber light, a quiet testament to bonds, mended and wisdom reborn. Brian nodded, his hand resting on the warm planks that had once divided them but now joined their families in something deeper. When the first green shoots pushed through the melting snow beneath a gray sky, William walked to the small cemetery on the ridge. He stopped at a simple wooden cross, the grave of the grandfather who had taught him that walls could breathe.
They finally listened. Grandfather, your walls are keeping them warm.
A crunch of footsteps. Brian Alden appeared, carrying a small stone in his cupped hands. He knelt and placed the stone on the marker without a word, a gesture of honor, older than any spoken vow.
Our children will know this, William. I swear it.
That's all he ever wanted. Someone to pass it down.
They turned and looked down at the village. A patchwork of longhouses, smoke rising, the sound of children laughing drifting up through the crisp air. The wisdom that had crossed the sea had found new soil, richer and deeper than they had dared hope. And in that quiet moment, both men understood that some walls were meant to keep more than heat. They were meant to keep a people alive. On a cold evening when the stars hung like ice, Brian Alden pulled his youngest onto his lap before the glowing shared wall.
And that's why we keep the cows close, little one. They gave us their warmth when we had nothing.
Across the valley, William Reeves sat in his own long house, watching Margaret and Emma by the same kind of wall.
Papa, is the wall magic?
No, love. It's just old. Old enough to remember what keeps a soul warm.
Emma pressed her hand to the warm timber, her face lit by its steady amber glow. William smiled, the quiet pride of a man who had kept his family safe without fire or sorcery. The two longhouses shone like twin hearths in the winter night, their shared walls humming with cattle heat. In the byre, the cows lowed softly, their breath mingling with the family's laughter. It was no miracle, only a forgotten truth, that survival could be as simple as a wall and a herd. The sun melted the last snow, and the valley turned green again after the long winter. Emma raced through the meadow, a newborn calf stumbling after her in joyful play. William and Brian walked the path, nodding to neighbors who no longer looked away. The central wall stood firm, its rough timber dark, but still bleeding warmth. Heat never demanded coin, only understanding, and that understanding had come. The longhouses glowed, each shared wall a promise kept against the coming night. William placed his hand on the warm wood, feeling the heartbeat of 1,000 winters. In the byre, the cattle lowed, their breath a constant gift to the families inside. The wall that had been mocked was now the wall that held them all, and it would hold them until the last winter gave way to the first spring. The shared wall stood silent, its amber glow the only light now. Some wisdom does not belong to a single man. It belongs to anyone willing to listen to the old walls. It had crossed the sea, taken root in new soil, and saved a people who had nearly forgotten how to listen. For 1,000 years, villages had known what this settlement only just discovered. That warmth is not something you make, it is something you share. And in that new world, the old ways kept them alive. The cattle breathed, the wall bled heat, and the families stayed safe. No fire needed, no sorcery, just a simple truth older than any of them. The wall that had been mocked now stood as the village's beating heart, and it would beat until the last winter was only a memory.